Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tyra Allen. I will be presenting today's session. I'm a student worker at the University Career Center, and I'm also a senior majoring in digital communication. And today we're going to talk about internships versus part-time jobs. At the beginning, I asked everyone who was joining in if they could select from our poll whether they choose the red pill, which is internships, or the blue pill, which is part-time jobs. And it looks like the red pill was the one that was selected by the majority of our audience for today. But don't worry, we're going to be covering both. Okay. So I believe I just shared the results with everyone. And let's move on to our next slide. So feel free to use the chat box. I want to ask you guys some questions just to get an idea of your knowledge on what are some ways that you can gain experience before you graduate. You can also unmute yourselves if it's a little bit easier for you to express it verbally versus non-verbally. But when I think about this, something that comes to mind is, one way would be definitely internships. Gaining experience can look like a lot of different things depending on what kind of skills you're trying to obtain. Do we have any?
Not yet. We did have one question earlier. What if we're planning on doing both, a part-time job and an internship?
Okay, yeah, you can actually do both. I know like for everyone, their experiences are different. I actually plan on doing both in the spring. So there's no like one way only type of thing. You're more than welcome to do multiple types of experiences. But I'll let you guys think about that. And if you want to enter it in the chat, you can. But I want to talk about the entry-level experience dilemma. How many of you are having trouble coming up with your experience to add to your resume? I know for me, I see this a lot on job descriptions where the requirements for someone who's applying for like an internship are like the same skills that like you're trying to gain from like actually doing that internship. And so it seems kind of weird because it's like, oh, I'm applying because I want to gain like this experience, but it seems like it's already a requirement. And you guys can like raise your hands or like use the reactions in the chat box if that's a little bit easier, if you've kind of felt that way too.
And Tyra, we had volunteering came through as a way to gain experience. We do have
Definitely.
another comment. I'm having trouble finding relevant experience. I have a lot of non-relevant experience.
Okay, and we will talk about that definitely in the presentation. So we're going to start first with the red pill, which was internships, since the majority chose that. And we're not only going to cover internships, we're going to dive deeper into those different types of experiences that you can gain outside of doing an internship. So first we'll talk about experiential learning, since this is what makes up the experiences outside of just internships. So what exactly is experiential learning? It's learning by doing and reflecting on your experiences. And this is basically what counts as experience. I know someone had mentioned volunteering. There's also externships, research, internships, study abroad, work study, and then doing leadership and participating in student orgs. Now, the reason why I'm presenting today is because I've actually done all of these. And I wanted to share like some of my experiences that I've been able to gain just from completing all of these experiences. So the first one I would like to talk about is volunteering and service learning. When I was a freshman in high school, my dad, he sat me down and he was like, hey, these next 4 years are going to go by really fast. You should really think about what is it that you want to go to college for while you still have time. So I was like, I love doing photography. I love graphic design. And so I decided to volunteer at my church on their media team. And so I did that for all 4 years in high school. It was a live broadcast, and I was a camera operator, and then I became the technical director, which is basically the person who controls like the screen and the graphics and everything that you see on TV. No pressure, right? But yeah, and so after my first year of doing that, I decided to go and transfer to a high school that had a digital media academy. And from there, I just kept volunteering, helping out on projects. This is a photo of me when I was a freshman in college. I was helping a good friend who's in the red shirt. His name's Zach, on a feature-length film, and never did that before. Learned so much along the way that I probably couldn't gain from just being inside of my classroom. And so then the next experience I completed was internships. I started my first internship when I was a senior in high school. I reached out to the city of Houston's Houston Television Broadcast Company, and also a local business owner who owned Carlino's Photography. And from there, I gained hands on experience by doing an assortment of things. Every day was an adventure, especially like working for Houston Television. I got to interview the mayor. At some point, I was like leaving the broadcast station to go off. They call it off field, in the field, and basically just like interview people, walk up to random strangers just to get reels. And then also with the Carlina's Photography, it was a lot of grunt work, moving equipment around, learning how to do lighting, and also understanding how to like create packages and sell them to people. I got to do a lot of networking this way, and the photo you see on the left was actually like my, I guess like formal headshot that I got for doing Carlino's photography internship. So that was like her like goodbye present for me, which was really nice because everyone needs a headshot. And then when I got to college, I did 2 internships and I got them through networking. Just talking to professors after class, going to office hours, telling them I'm really passionate, just want to gain some experience. And they knew a guy. And so my first one was with Vanjie Garrett, who was an author. And the first photo you see in the left hand corner was actually like a photo shoot that he asked me to basically coordinate. I had to reach out to the model, plan the location, plan the wardrobe, and of course, photograph and edit and publish this advertisement for him. And then at the end of my internship, he gave me 100% creative freedom to do my own photo shoot inside of his studio. And so I coordinated with a local designer in Houston. Through my networking, I ended up working with a guy who just happened to own his own modeling agency. And one of my other professors knew a model, and that's the lady you see in the middle. And she was willing to help out as well in the photo shoot. And so that was the final product. It was one of my favorite photos from the photo shoot. And then my more recent internship that I did while I was at UTSA, again, just talking to a professor after class, she happened to know somebody who needed an intern who was good at digital communication. So I helped the UTSA Tuggle and Jefferson scholars with creating podcasts and helping their scholars basically present the information that they were doing research on in a way that was more appealing to the local citizens of San Antonio, but also college age students who might not necessarily read like academic journals, but would like to know what kind of research our students are working on. And then my next experience was work study, which is where I'm at right now. On the first day of school, when I transferred to UTSA, I got hired as a receptionist at the University Career Center. From then, like fast forward to now, I'm now like student worker in the Experiential Learning program. And my reason for staying as a work study for my 2 years was because my major is digital communication, and I really wanted to gain experience in business administration since that wasn't, there weren't really any classes geared towards that with my major. And I also wanted to network. We have a lot of employers who come in. They're always looking to see like if students are being professional, and if you get to have a conversation with them, they get to learn a little bit more about you. You might make a connection on LinkedIn. They might know somebody who just might be looking for someone who has a skill set that you do. So I really appreciated the employer relations aspect. And then job shadowing and externships. So spring break was coming up, and I thought about maybe I want to become a lawyer. Maybe I want to do like something related to entertainment or media law. So I reached out to my cousin who owns her own virtual paralegal business and asked her if I could shadow her for spring break. I went to a mediation at a law firm. She taught me how to format and document legal style documents, drafting those, and just kind of like learning a lot more about like legal language. Oh my gosh, like it's like a whole, it's not even English, but it's really cool once you start to learn some of those fancy technical terms. And I had a blast. I definitely took away from it though that I did not want to be a lawyer. I'm more into doing the research. I really like being a very analytical person. And I just kind of felt like as a lawyer, it wasn't necessarily their job, but maybe the paralegal's job to do more of that research. So fast forward to 2020, coronavirus. My cousin's a virtual paralegal. Well, guess what? Everyone needs a virtual paralegal now, and she's like, business is booming out of nowhere, and she needs help. And she was like, "Oh, I remember you shadowed. I trained you. Can you work for me? Because like you already know what to do." Because I took the time to apply myself, it allowed that opportunity to be open for me, so that way I could like maintain like some kind of employment on the side while still gaining professional experience. So now I can actually say like I'm not a certified paralegal, but I am a legal administration assistant. And all I need to do now is just take the exam and I can get certified because I already have the professional training. So that's really cool. And then study abroad. Last summer, I got to go on a faculty-led study abroad trip to Frankfurt, Germany, and Geneva, Switzerland. This was really cool. I got to sit in the classroom where half the students were German and the other half were American. We talked about politics, transatlantic relations, global affairs, and this definitely helped me with my international communication skills. And then we flew to Switzerland and we learned about the United Nations. We went to all their different departments like UNEP, UNDP, UNCTAD, and UNHCR. And one thing I'll say about UNEP is that was my favorite one. And I actually got to make a network there. I went to the communications department at all of these different organizations since that's my major, and I wanted to know, how do I get in? Well, I met a girl who was in her master's program at UT Austin. And, you know, since we're both in the UT school system, she ended up being a really great connection, added me on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and we still keep in touch to this day. And she really did help me understand the process a lot better. So always remember to network, no matter where you go. And then my next experience was undergraduate research. I took a class that was by the chair of the communication department, Dr. LeBlanc, and it was conduct and communication inquiry. And oh my God, that class was really hard. And then I think because like I knew it would be such a great experience to just have it on my resume, and Dr. LeBlanc kind of convinced me like, hey, you know, if you do really well on this research paper, you can submit it to the Spring Research Conference in 2020, and it would be something really good to add on your resume. So I went the extra mile. I conducted graduate level research, surveyed over 100 people, and learned how to use statistical data processing software, which was really hard. But my professor, Dr. LeBlanc, we went to office hours. He was always there to help me. And it paid off in the end. Even though COVID kind of messed up the conference, I was nominated and selected to become a part of the Academy of Undergraduate Research Associates. So I can put that on my resume because I worked that hard last semester. And then lastly, my leadership in student orgs. So this one was kind of like one experience led to another. So I was a senator when I first started at UTSA and the Student Government Association. And then from there, I became the communications director for the UTSA Democrats. And then afterwards, I was unanimously elected president for the UTSA Dems. From there, I was like, okay, we're like a chapter, a part of a larger organization called the Texas College Democrats. Well, they were running an election, so I decided to go for secretary, and I was elected as secretary. Um, and because we're in an election cycle, I ended up becoming the national co-chair for the Black Students for Biden, and also just a member of College Democrats America and Texas Young Democrats. A lot of organizations, really easy to keep up with them because it's all virtual. Otherwise, it will be a little bit harder. But some of the key highlights were me getting deputized to become a voter registrar. So I basically can register people to vote. I got to meet Kamala Harris. We got to talk about some of the bills that she was working on. She asked for our input. Very genuine lady. And then, of course, just working with my other fellow national co-chairs for the Black Student for Biden, who are all over the United States, but definitely very passionate leaders. And I would also just like to encourage everyone to know, like, you can do this too. I'm first gen woman of color, had zero experience. I didn't know all of this stuff would just lead to the one thing after the other. But I just knew I had to keep applying myself, and it would always set me up for success. And I would just encourage you guys to think about that too, as you are applying for different experiences. Always be passionate, driven, and just give it your all, because like there's so many people who are watching you because they want to see you succeed. And as long as you're putting forth your best effort, like everything will work out in the end. So if you need help learning on how to like get started with this, I would encourage you to go to our Career Center website. And I believe one of our co-hosts will put that in the chat box, a link to it. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to what can I do with this major? This is a really wonderful resource that can help you pinpoint how to start your next experience. And I'll provide a little example here with mine. So the first step you'll want to do is you'll want to highlight areas of interest. So what I like about this resource is when you're mapping your strategy, you can start with on the left-hand side, the left column, you can pick which sector do you want to go into. So for me, I'd probably want to go into government. Then you'll review your potential employers that you would probably like to work with. Definitely do your research. For me, it would probably be like nonprofit. And then step 3 would be to identify 1 to 2 strategies that can help you get there. So this is the time where you would just go through and highlight like which ones do you think you could start on as either a short-term or long-term goal. And then, excuse me, I would encourage you, once you are able to get to that point, apply this process where you can plan, apply for the position, whether it's an internship or if you're just trying to gain some volunteer experience, and then go out and do the actual thing that you've been trying to figure out for so long. Do it, enjoy it, get your feet wet, have fun, and then after it's all over with, review and reflect. For me, when I had shadowed with my cousin, this was me when I was flying back to Texas because she's in Florida. But yeah, I realized, maybe I don't want to be a lawyer, but I do like the analytical side. And so it helped me determine like, okay, maybe paralegal route might make more sense. So now I'm gaining that experience currently as like a virtual legal admin assistant. Yeah, and I would suggest, you can take a screenshot of this if you want, but definitely apply this principle to, even if you do have a part-time job, just because it might help you analyze like going forward, what should I do to help me get closer to that industry you want to be in. And then this is another example of the reflection model. So first you do the experience, then you determine like what happened, what were the results. Then you say, what do these results imply? How do I influence the outcome? And then after that, you just say, well, what will I do differently next time? What will I continue doing? And this kind of helps you focus in on exactly what it is that you want to obtain. Because maybe like you did have fun, but something about it just you couldn't pinpoint it right then and there, but now that you have this time that you're taking to reflect, it definitely can help you. And you should do this every time you do an experience, even if it's just volunteering. So now let's talk about part-time jobs, the blue pill. So with part-time jobs, there are pros and cons, and I didn't separate them just because it can be either or, honestly. So one thing that I would consider as a con might be the lack of flexibility in terms of your schedule. So let's say like you have a group project, but it's outside of your normal school hours. So you probably might be working, that might be a little bit harder for you to manage, or even going to office hours to talk to your professor might be a little bit harder, depending on when your work schedule is. And then there's also limited time off. So you might not get paid time off if you do have to, leave in order to help or help or volunteer or gain some other types of experiences as well, aside from just part-time job, just from doing a part-time job. And then industry it can either be a pro or a con. You could be working in the industry that is already related to your major, or you could be working at like Peter Piper Pizza, but like your job, like your goal is to go into cybersecurity. So it's like the two don't really align. So it's just kind of like that's another thing is if you're getting closer to your industry, or if it's not necessarily if it's not necessarily related to your industry. And then stable income would definitely be a pro, just because like a part-time job isn't necessarily temporary in terms of like an internship might be. And then transferable skills, regardless of where you decide to do your part-time job at, you can, or like what industry you decide to go into, you can definitely gain some experience that is relatable to your professional skill set. So if you show up early, ask to take initiative by maybe like helping out the manager, if you get promoted to assistant manager, these are all great things that you can have as a referral that your supervisor can put down to help you get to your next experience. And then, of course, networking. Always be kind, cordial, and professional, because people are always watching you regardless of the setting. And you can always make really good connections with the people you work with. You might be working with the next Beyonce, you never know. So just be cool, But yeah, and then of course, set goals. If you don't set goals, you'll become complacent. If you become complacent, you won't adapt to change. So always set goals for yourself and use the reflection model that I had stated previously. And then lastly, I'll just touch on micro internships. These are short-term projects, and I know one of our co-hosts can put the link to that in the chat. You can either do something as short as 5 hours a week to 40 hours a week, depending on the project. They're always paid, and they can help you gain new skills, especially if you're thinking of changing your major and you need more experience in something else, or if you want to explore the career field that you're about to go into and you want to work on a project with a company. And there's various industries out there. So there's a little bit for something, a little bit for everyone. So it doesn't really matter like what exactly your major is. There's probably going to be something out there for you. So now that we've come towards the end of our presentation, I would like for you guys to take the poll again to determine if you want to do the red pill, which is internships and experiences. It's not just limited to internships. And then the blue pill, which is the part-time job. So you guys get to decide, has your opinion shifted, or have we had different results? And for those who may be joining us, don't forget to put your ABC 1, 2, 3 in the chat.
Looks like we have almost all who have voted.
Very cool. All right, it looks like the majority, went ahead and chose the red pill. Very cool, you guys. And I'll go ahead and...
Tyra, I'd love to hear some context for those who voted. I know we had majority choose the red pill, some blue pill, but I'm curious to hear from the audience. What were some reasonings behind choosing the internship or the part-time job?
So, I would like to share the reason I chose the part-time job, honestly, is because I've worked part-time jobs. Usually I would try to choose at least a part-time job that would at least give me some office skill, or if anything, at least some customer service skill, because honestly, I am like a pretty, um, I guess, unconfident, or like pretty like a shy person to be actually speaking to a lot of people. And so usually when I get into those jobs, it actually helps me a lot to move out of that shell. So I think first I had to deal with that. And then as soon as I realized I'm like kind of over that a bit to speak with people, that I like start going to more jobs like um that would assist more like the career wise, because I do need like steady income at least. So most of it's kind of like income slash like trying to like get into the world first of all. But I think like yeah, I would want to move towards internships, because I would really like to gain more on hand experience like actually in the field of what I would actually be doing.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I work and go to school, and still finding an internship was a little tricky as well, trying to balance all three. But I really would encourage you to take advantage of the micro internships, especially like over winter break, since we won't be in classes. That might be like a fun time to just kind of hone in on some of your skills. But I would also suggest maybe working on some different resources like lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning, or Skillshare. Those are like some pretty good places where you can get like some kind of certification. I know at least with LinkedIn Learning, they have like a completion certification. So that way, if you want to learn more about, for me, like let's say graphic design, a specific graphic design software, it would show up on LinkedIn, and that could be like pretty good way to make you a competitive applicant.
Yeah, most of the concern was like, oh, most of the internships did require like actually some experience, and I was just
Yeah.
like, why would I apply if I don't have the experience? But I need the experience, so I'll try to do something first, and then at least
Right.
something to put in.
Yeah, that
So
definitely makes sense.
yeah,
Well,
that just it's very off-putting. But I realize now that like you know what, it never hurts to try.
Hmm.
for sure. And I just heard you say some experience that you've gained from the different part-time jobs that you've had. You know, the customer service aspect, communicating with people, all of those are experience and skills you can take with you in any position, right? So I encourage you to reflect on your part-time job experience and identify what you have learned from it and what you can take with you, because that's all stuff you can put on your resume too as experience, even though it doesn't feel relevant. Those are what we call those transferable skills that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need anywhere you go. You're going to have to talk with people and work as a team and solve problems. So those are things that you can take with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you're already in a good place.
Yeah, most people told me when I was applying, they're like, you know, you could put more on here. And I was like, oh, I guess I could, but I just don't know how, or like, and then they would kind of help me out. Like my hiring people would like help me out like that. I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds a bit better. Then I'll just try that. And so, yeah, it's a mix of learning. So
Let me ask you, what's your major?
I'm doing environmental science. And so I realized I could now probably volunteer more like the garden center and stuff like that, solid waste. Like I'm trying to look for stuff like that, but
Very cool.
mm-hmm.
The reason I ask is we have career counselors in every college. So if you'd ever want to get a second look at your resume and how you can incorporate some of those skills you've gained from your part-time experience, that's something that, and Tyra's going to talk about how to do that as well. So you're not alone in this. We're here to support you.
Yeah, I was gonna say we definitely have like handshake appointments that you can make to meet with a career counselor, and we'll put the link so that way you can access handshake from here. But we have everything from career exploration to maybe you want to change your major or you need help planning your career path. And then, of course, internship assistance, whether it's applying, going through the interviewing process, and the same for job search assistance as well. We can also have like a counselor review your resume, your cover letter, just to make for sure you're really putting all of your skills on your resume and just coming off as just like the best and most qualified applicant. A lot of times we overlook certain skills, but like for me, because like I was in high school when I did gain a lot of like training with different types of software, I kind of overlook it because it's just like, oh well, yeah, I kind of learned how to do a little bit of coding, but no, like employers are like, it doesn't matter. Like the fact that you did something is like, it's better than just saying you didn't do it and not having it on your resume, and then you have to explain it in an interview when they could already see it ahead of time. So just never overlook certain small things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was doing in the beginning. They're just like, yeah, you could add more. Like, you have a lot more experience than you realize. And I'm like, oh, really? Like that? But I was just cashiering most of this time. Like, I don't know what else to put.
Oh no, definitely. So yeah, I would suggest starting there. Our counselors can help you through the entire process. And if you ever have any trouble along the way, we're always here to help you. So feel free to reach out. But does anybody else have any more questions, or do you have any more questions?
Um, I don't know. I guess more like a little bit on how would you like apply for stuff? Because like I understand the thing about like, oh, let me go for when I have a part-time job, you actually have to call days off ahead and stuff like that. Like it is a bit inflexible to actually apply for an internship, and so I was kind of like hoping you probably could share something like that, or how like you've dealt with it.
Yeah, so for me, I had to be highly organized, so that way I can remember like certain deadlines that are coming up for different applications. And I really appreciate like with Handshake, you can save or favorite a job, and it'll actually send you a reminder if you have it set up in your settings to let you know like, oh, this is coming up, like you need to apply. But I would also suggest like for me, I like to tailor my resume to each job description. So I would actually meet with a career counselor and like show them like, hey, here's a link to the job description and this is my resume. Is there any way before the deadline? I would say come a week to 2 weeks in advance. Is there any way we could try to tailor this so that way I'm putting all the skills on there that would make me like really qualified? And I would say like that would be a really good thing. And then of course with interviews, I think it's nice that since we are like in a pandemic, everything is virtual. So maybe just I know sometimes employers might do a cold call interview where they just call you randomly and hopefully they can just interview you right then and there. But I would also just say like what your availability is, and if you at least can do like an interview during your lunch break, if you get 30 minutes to an hour, and just tell them like, oh, I have like from this time to this time, would that be okay? Something like that. They'll try to meet you and be flexible with you for that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. So then for I guess your time frame or like I forgot how to word it.
Oh, like for like how soon should you start applying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I noticed that depending on the type of internship, it could be you should apply like 3 months beforehand, or I don't know, the start times are kind of different. I know since we do have a lot of federal agencies coming, a lot of them suggest like if you do want to have an internship in the summer, then you need to apply before November. And so usually there's like a recruiter that you can reach out to, but they usually state it on the application. We need this application to be submitted by this time. So a good rule of thumb would be if you know that you need an internship for the spring, to start looking between like the summer and before November, because I think they'll usually try to start interviewing before the holidays start or right afterwards. But usually I think they start opening up applications like in the summer, because the earlier you apply, the better your chances are of getting an interview before the holidays come, and they might put it off or they might close off the application if I think like I know with LinkedIn, they normally tell you how many people have already applied. And if you're within like those 25 people, I think that kind of helps you gauge like, okay, well, obviously they're going to be interviewing, but since I'm within like that range of like the first couple of people who have applied, it might be a little bit easier for them to not overlook your application. Does that, because like what I think is, even if their application doesn't close until like, let's say December, if they're already interviewing people now, and if they do find a candidate, it's kind of like you want to be one of those first couple of people to apply just in case that happens, and then they end up not hiring anyone who applied after like November. It's like a first come first serve type of thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has any other questions, I don't know if there's any in the chat, but
Not yet. There's no other questions in the chat just yet.
okay. Well, yeah, guys, feel free to put your questions in the chat. This is the conclusion of my presentation, but we do have more events going on for the rest of today. If you want to tune in at 1 o'clock today, we'll have the real world experience through industry projects. We'll have a presenter who will talk about that. And then at 5 p.m., we have NASA. They're going to be coming to talk about turning your internship into a reality. So this might help those of you who are trying to figure out, like, you want an internship, but how exactly, what are those steps that I definitely need in order to get there? It can be a really intimidating process, but that's where we're having the professionals come out and give you the best tips, since they are looking for interns and they definitely want to see you guys apply. So I hope this helps, and thank you so much. We're gonna be on here until, I believe, until 11. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves or just ask them in the chat box. But I thank you so much for all of you guys who came out to participate.